As usual, we speak on the Seder on Tuesday. The Parsha of the week is Parshas Tetzaveh. And the first command, the first mitzvah in this Parsha is that Moshe should tell the Yidden that they should prepare for him pure oil, Shemen Zayis Zoch. This is the purest oil possible. It doesn't have any impurities. And what is the oil going to be used for? It's going to be used to make light, to light the menorah. There's an interesting inyan that the Rebbe points out in this parsha. We know that this parsha, that Zion Oder, which was this Sunday, Zion Oder is the birthday and also the day of passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. Where's Yisrael? Yeah, Yisrael. The other Yisrael. The Argentinian.
I brought him back. He's supposed to be around.
If you can get him without losing too much time, yes, otherwise.
I don't know if he was feeling so well. He asked me earlier.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling well? Okay, unfortunately. Zion Oder is the birth and the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. And so there's some that say that the Parshas Ato Tetzaveh is the only Parsha in the Torah that does not have Moshe Rabbeinu's name. I'm sure you heard this. Since Moshe Rabbeinu's birth, this is the only Parsha where Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned. And the reason, at least one of the reasons that's presented for this is that because Parsha Tetzaveh is usually the Parsha that is associated with Zion Oder, of the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why
the only Parsha in the Torah where Moshe's name doesn't mention?
Yes, since his birth. Moshe Rabbeinu's birth is related in the Torah in Parsha Shmois. Since Parsha Shmois till the end of the Torah, there's no Parsha where his name is not mentioned, except Parsha Ato Tetzaveh. There's another thing that is said in relation to this inyan, that the omission, everybody knows what the omission, it's missing. That Moshe Rabbeinu's name is omitted, it's not there. In this parsha, is associated with what Moshe Rabbeinu said after the Egel, after the Yidden made the Egel, the golden calf. And Moshe Rabbeinu stood up to Hashem and he said, you must forgive them. And if you're not going to forgive them, then erase my name, erase me from the Torah that you wrote. So it says that clearly Hashem did not accept this request. Nonetheless, since Moshe Rabbeinu had said it, it reflected itself in the Torah that there is one parsha in the Torah that does not have his name. You all right, Israel? You're not feeling well? אתם לא מרגיש טוב?
יש לי כואב לי הראש.
כואב ראש. אוקיי. אוקיי. תשמע את מה שהם אומרים, ויעקב ראש יסתלק.
אמן.
And if you don't understand something, pick up your finger. Okay? We have no problem with not understanding. We have a problem in that we don't care to ask. לא אכפת לשאול. If you care to ask, there's no problem. So as we said, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is taken out of this parsha. One of the reasons is because Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, erase me from your Torah if you don't forgive the Eden for the Egel. So the Rebbe asks a very insightful, a very deep question. The Rebbe says, the Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in Torah. But it doesn't mean that Moshe Rabbeinu is absent from the Torah. He's not there. It's like the Gemer Shehu Ne'adar min HaParsha. Parsha Tetzaveh. Ein bo Shem Shmo Shel Moshe. אבל הרבי אומר שהוא שמו לא שם, אבל הוא לא נעדר מן הפרשה. He's not missing there. On the contrary, he is referred to in the Parsha with the word Ata. Ata means what? You. When you say you, this is even more than the name. The name is just a reference, talking about him. But in talking to you, that's him himself. And the Rebbe explains, yes, indeed, that in terms of the Egel, that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not there, but when Moshe Rabbeinu said, erase me from your Torah, he meant only the name, which means the reference. But he himself is putting himself, his whole etzem, his whole nefesh, his whole etzem for the Eden, to save the Eden. And that's why this parsha has Moshe Rabbeinu even more than other parshas, because here he is represented not by name but by person.
Is this an answer? Is this an answer?
Right. There's a long sikha. I just wanted to point out that even though the name of Moshe Rabbeinu is missing in this parsha, but in fact Moshe Rabbeinu is present in this parsha in his very essence more than any place else. And I want to speak about the first mitzvah in this parsha. First mitzvah in this parsha, it says, Hashem says to Moshe that you should tell the Yidden that they should prepare for you this special pure oil, because you will need this oil to light the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Mishkan. This pure oil, it was required only for lighting the menorah. The oil was used in the Mishkan in many other things, like in Kol Mincha and the Sochin, there was oil. But for that, you didn't need this pure oil. It could be any oil. It had to be olive oil, but it didn't have to be pure oil. And for lighting the menorah, you needed that pure oil. And I want to discuss what's so special about light, about lighting, that for this you need a pure oil, an oil that does not have any impurities, anything that interferes with the light. Physically, the Gashmiyut, you see that sound, what you hear, noise, you can hear through a wall. You can hear, אפשר לשמוע קול מאחורי הכיס, הכותל, קיר. But light has to come direct. Light cannot be obstructed. It has to come direct from the source. That's why we say we have light, and we say if there is light, there is a sun. Because light cannot be anything but coming directly from its source. And what is the function and the power of light? I'm going to go off a little bit in discussing simple things, and then we'll come back. We always use simple illustrations, simple mishalim. When you come into a room, like this room, and it's dark, and you want to know what's in this room, you can walk around and feel your way, and you can feel and identify everything that's in the room by feel. And when you switch on the light, you also see everything. It is true that when you switch on the light, you know it right away, in 1 second, much faster than walking around and feeling and touching everything. So it's only a question of time, that this is faster and this is slower. But actually, you can actually identify everything that's in the room. That is true only regarding the physical objects in the room. You know, there's a table, there's this number of tables and chairs and so forth. You can identify everything with light and without light. But then there is another completely different aspect. Yesh od inyan. There's another aspect of what you see that you can only identify by seeing, and you can't identify by touch. Any other way. That is really an intangible. What intangible means? There is nothing. There's nothing to touch. And that is what is this room about? What is this? It's not a room of tables and chairs. This is not a store where you sell tables and chairs. This is a room that the tables and chairs are there for a reason. Not just storage. What is it about? In other words, why did the people bring the tables and chairs in this room? That you do not know except by sight. In other words, light shows you more than there is physically. Light shows you what the significance and the meaning of what it is, what's going on. Not just what there is physically. We once spoke, more than once, spoke about the power of sight. That we all know that sight gives a person a sense of the reality way beyond, much more powerfully, much more strongly than any other sense, than touch, than taste, anything. And the real reason for this is that in any other sense, you know the thing that you're touching only because you are touching it, only because it affects you. Whereas in sight, you see not because it affects you, but you see because it exists. You see the thing itself, even though it doesn't affect you, it has nothing to do with you, but you see the reality. בראייה אפשר להרגיש את האמת של הדבר. לא רק איך זה נוגע לך. When you walk around the room and you touch all the tables and chairs, all the objects, how do you find out that there is a table there? Very simple. You move your hand, and your hand can't move anymore. Right? Something stops it. So you know there is something there. In other words, because it obstructs you, it affects you. You can't walk through, so you know there is something there. There's a wall, so you walk into the wall, oh, I can't go anymore because it doesn't let me go. So all of these things you find out by personal experiment, because it affects you. That's not the real thing. The real thing is when you know what the thing is by itself, not how it affects you, but what is the truth about this. How it affects you is a second thing. We spoke about this many times, and I'm repeating it as often as the opportunity gives, because it's very important. And particularly the world we live in, this union is very much lost. In halacha, there is a din that a summa, Rahman san, somebody who is blind, is potter from all the mitzvahs. He's potter, he is exempt from all the mitzvahs. You learned recently in Pashas Vayetze, you learned in Rashi, where Rashi says that Yitzchok was blind, and the Yetzer Hara posik, he doesn't have a Yetzer Hara anymore. Yetzer Hara goes away from somebody who is blind. Why? He can still taste everything. He can still feel everything. Why no Yetzer Hara? The answer is because if Chas v'Sholom, a person loses his sight, the world is not real anymore. It's not. It is not. Huh?
When you touch something without seeing it, it's fake.
No, you don't. You know it because
But what you touch, it's real. You can.
right. Understand what we mean by real. Like, I'm talking to you, right? I'm talking to you. There is the way I see you and the way you think to yourself. And yes, הצד שאני רואה ממך, ויש הצד שאתה רואה בפנימיות הלב והמוח שלך. כן?
יש איך שהוא רואה אותך ויש איך שאתה רואה אותך. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah? אתה רואה מה שאני חושב? לא. אבל אתה רואה שאני חושב. כן? איך זה?
כי יש חן. לפי המראה של בן אדם, אתה רואה שזה...
אוקיי. זאת אומרת שאתה רואה מה שאינו מגיע לך. אתה רואה מה שאני לעצמי. אבל כשאתה משש בטייבל, אתה רואה רק זה שמגיע לך. אבל לא הוא האמת של הדבר. You understand? You understand, but not everybody. So I was asking more specifically. So he says, when you touch it, yeah, that's true. It's true, but it's only true to the extent that it affects you. You don't know the thing how it is to itself. So I gave the motion when you talk to a person, you see somebody. When you look at somebody, so you see him the way you see him, but you don't know what his thoughts are. And the way he sees himself is completely different. He's, at this time, involved in his thoughts much deeper. And yet, you know that there is a deeper part to him. How do you know there is a deeper part to him? You don't see it. Yeah. What? Deeper. Yoter amok. How do you know there is a deeper part in him? Because inside you see the truth of the thing itself, not just the way it affects you. This is an important distinction. And this is why, like we said before, when you put the light on, you see not just the objects in the room, but you see what is the kavanah, what is the intent, what is it all about. Now, if you think about it a little deeper, we will see that what is the real truth that's going on in this room? Is it that the truth has tables and chairs, or is it that it is just an idea? It's a besmedrash. The idea of a besmedrash is a ruchnistic thing. Right? It's a concept, it's an union that exists in a person's mind. The tables and chairs are things that you can actually touch and feel. What is the real, what is more true in what's going on in this room? In other words, you follow?
Okay.
Yeah. I'll put the question a little bit more precisely. Why are the tables and chairs there? What makes it there? Is it just because they are there, or because there is space here, that's why they are there, or because of what this room is about, that there is a Beis Medrash? What compels it? What is the reason that it's there? Clearly, it's because it's a Beis Medrash, which means that what you see is a ruchnius, a spiritual union. And that is the truth of what you see. That is more true than the physical object. מה שאתה רואה זה דבר רוחני. מה? בקשר המשל שאני נתתי, המשל שאתה רואה חדר כזה. מה העניין שאתה רואה? אתה רואה את השולחנות והכיסאות, או אתה רואה שזה Beis Medrash? זה Beis Medrash. אבל Beis Medrash זה רק עניין, זה לא גשמי. אבל זהו האמת. מה האמת פה? זה Beis Medrash, לא הכיסאות והשולחנות. Okay. One step further, if I have you. The reason that this is what we see when you have light. Now, clearly, lahavdil, a cat does not see that this is a Beis Medrash. A cat also has eyes to see. But it doesn't see that it's a Beis Medrash. The cat sees that only sees the tables and chairs. It doesn't even know what they are. Just sees things in the middle that standing there. Doesn't see the union that the human being sees. Right? חתול לא רואה שזה Beis Medrash. חתול רואה שיש כאן שולחן, גם לא רואה איזה שולחן, יש איזה דבר. In other words, what connects this sight that a person sees? It connects it to his neshama. Because that in his neshama, he knows that things are not there just because they're there, because they're the physical presence. Things are there because of their spiritual and purpose quality. To a human being, everything has to have a purpose. So he immediately goes and sees what's the purpose, what's the reason for this. And he ignores everything else because that's the real thing. Because with sight, we see right away the way our nefesh, our neshama sees, not the way our guf sees. You understand? In order, everybody understands? Yeah. In order to see this type of sight, to see a spiritual thing, not the physical thing, the light has to be pure. What is pure light? Pure light is a light that does not interfere with your vision. Like when you see the table, let's say, you see this room. You don't even see the light, you see the room. The light is like not there. You understand? What? Interfere means it doesn't mix in. You don't notice it. You just see what the light illuminates. You don't notice the means, the object by the way it illuminates it, right? If the light had a mamoshus, was not pure, then you would not see the same thing. Then you would see the light. You would interfere. You would interfere with your vision, right? And you would not see clearly the reality that you're looking at. So this is all a physical moshel. This physical moshel is made so that we would understand the real spiritual meaning, significance of this. Hashem gave us a Torah. And in this Torah, there are many mitzvahs. There are 630 mitzvahs. A whole bunch of things in the Torah. And we learn Torah with our seichel. And since we're learning Torah with our seichel, step back a moment. Learning Torah with our seichel has the following effect. Let me explain to you. Our seichel, we can understand Gashmiut, we can understand Ruchniut. Our seichel is not neshama. Our seichel, we can understand the world too with our seichel. Our seichel, in terms of learning Torah, is the same as in the moshel, like when a person goes into the room and he sees that this is a bismedrish, and then he goes with his hands and feels the tables and chairs. Right? He can still go and feel the tables and chairs. And if somebody comes to him and says to him, listen carefully to this. Somebody comes to him and says, but you saw, you're imagining it. The real thing is what you feel with your hands. That's the real thing. Because that you can touch, that you can feel. It is possible to lose sight. What sight? To lose idea of what he actually sees. Because he's shown the physical part. Even though it's possible for him to see the overall, the meaning of it, but because there is also the physical part, he can lose sight. Afshar lahavid et ha-masha ro'eh, et ha-inyan, et ha-kavanah shero'im. And I will give you a moshel that we always use, of great importance. that when the sun rises in the morning, we make a bracha that the Rebbe made light. Yoitzer HaMa'oris, right? He makes light every day. So then somebody comes and he argues and he says, it has nothing to do with Hashem, nothing to do with making light. There is a big ball of fire that the earth comes in its way and it becomes light. It's all physical. There's nothing there. When you wake up in the morning, you say, "Oh, it's light, it's morning." So, no, what is it? It's just physical, a physical thing. So it's possible for us to lose. It's possible for us to lose sight, to lose the idea that Hashem made day and night. The first bracha of the brachas that we make in the morning, Birchas HaShachar, Noisen Lasech Vivino Lahavchin Ben Yoim Uvein Loila, right? To distinguish between day and night. Huh? You need Seichel Lahavchin, בטח. ילד מבחין מפני שיש לו שכל של הנפש. מפני זה הוא מבחין. גם השכלי, אתה יודע מה זה שכלי? תרנגול.
תרנגול. גם יש לך, יודעת שבבוקר צריך לעשות קוקו ובלילה.
כן. אבל זהו שהשם נתן לו בינה להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. להבחין שזה יום. Hashem, that's why we make a bracha. Because Hashem gave him Binah to understand this. We spoke in the past, many of you may remember, I explained that we have to understand that what Hashem made here is not just light, He made day, which is a completely different concept than just light. Maybe we'll sometimes repeat this again. But it is important to understand that everything in our world, even the most spiritual and the finest things, have to come to us through what's called a keli. And the keli is Gashmiut. A besmedrash. What's a besmedrash? Walls, tables, chairs. Everything has a Gashmi has a Gashmi kelim by which we use it, becomes to us. But we shouldn't lose sight of what it is that we really relate to. What really the important thing. The same thing in Torah. Like we spoke yesterday in the Shir. Not all of you were there, but that the Torah says, Loi signoi, we should not steal. In this Loi signoi, there are two parts. There is Loi signoi, we should not steal because the policeman says you shouldn't steal, and if you steal, I'm going to throw you into jail. And there is Loi signoi, we should not steal because Hashem says you shouldn't steal. Which is a completely different thing. When Hashem says you shouldn't steal, it means that not only that you are doing wrong, you'll be punished. That the whole creation that Hashem made, the whole world, the whole truth of what exists, says to you, don't steal. Not because of the consequences, but because this is something which doesn't fit into this holy world. Just like a person would understand that when you come to a bismedrash, you don't do certain things because you don't fit, it's not appropriate. In Hashem's world, it's not appropriate to steal because Hashem is there. So in order to get from the Torah the real light of the Torah has to be learned in a very pure way. This is the meaning of this parsha. That you have to make oil that gives light. The oil that gives light has to be very, very pure. What makes the light pure in terms of learning Torah? What does it mean that you're learning pure? In learning Torah, there is two parts, like we said before. There is the part of what I understand, and the part that I know that this is words that come from Hashem. In order that what we understand in Torah should be the real Torah, should be that which gives us highest, gives us light, we have to always remember the first thing when we learn something, just like light, we said before, light comes from a source, always comes from a source. The first thing we have to remember when we learn is not that it makes sense to us. I understand. The first thing that we remember, that we have to think of is say, oh, this is Hashem's word. Hashem is the one who's telling me this. And then I try to understand what it is. This is the meaning that for light has to be pure. That it comes to me not because I understand it, because it makes sense to me. It comes to me because it was given to me directly from Hashem. This is how a child in Cheder learns Torah. And this is how one grows up with Torah. He knows that when he learns Torah, this is not the amount, but he understands that that's a secondary. This is like coming around and feeding the tables in the room. But the first thing is that he sees that this is a word from Hashem. And it could be said that the fact that this mitzvah of making this pure oil is in Pashas the Tetzaveh. And we said that Tetzaveh is a Pasha where Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not there. But there is more than Moshe Rabbeinu's name. There is Moshe Rabbeinu himself. There's Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Which means that to provide Yidden with this idea that Torah is to be learned, like you see something in the light, not only how you learn it with your seichel, but how you see it in light. When you see the truth itself coming from its source, that is something which is affected by Moshe Rabbeinu himself. It's not something that is affected just by words, by teaching. This is like affected by Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Practically speaking, this means like this. It says, first of all, like I said, we have to always remember that the words that we are saying, these are the words from the Meibush, Moshe. It says also that when one repeats, saying something in the name of a Rebbe, let's say you say the Rebbe says, or Rabbi Yehuda says, or Rabbi Meir says, all the names of the big Tanoim. Why do we have in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, all the time, the names of the Tanoim? Rabbi Meir says, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Shua says. Because by having these names, we become associated, we become connected to them. So that when we're learning, we're not just learning their words, what they said. We're learning it directly from them. So that if we're learning something, and we're learning Rashi, and Rashi is saying such and such, and we are at this moment thinking and feeling that Rashi himself is teaching us these words. So how do we learn it? First, we learn what Rashi says. We take it in. Rashi is teaching us these words. And then we try to understand and ask questions and bring it closer to ourselves. But the first thing is that we receive and we accept these words. This way of learning, this is what makes the Torah come into our mind, become light to us. And afterwards we can also understand it. This is, the mashal for this is like a person takes a piece of food and he puts it in his mouth and he eats it. And he chews it up and he digests it and becomes part of him. How does that happen? It happens not because he understands that this food is made up of these chemicals and this is how it's going to give him food. It's because he knows that the Hashem made this food for him to eat, and that's how he eats it. And that's how come his body accepts it, because it was made for it. The same way when we learn Torah. Learning Torah and learning secular studies are totally different things, because those are made by people and Torah is made by Hashem. So when we learn Torah, the first thing we let it come in, and then afterwards once we have it, we digest it and we chew it up and we try to understand it and make it and begin to feel it, so to speak, with our hands and with our seichel. So this is the mitzvah where the Torah says that the oil that you use for light has to be completely pure. And I explained what means pure. There is nothing interfering between the source, coming the source where the light comes from and where the light comes to. Of course, this is that part in the person that's called emunah. every Yid naturally has a munah in Hashem. Understanding, that depends how much his seichel is developed, but a munah everybody has. And our first approach and touch in Torah, in Yiddishkeit, is with this emunah. This is the oil in the nefesh. And then afterwards, once we absorb it, we begin to understand it, and we grow up to it, and become strong and healthy people. So Hashem should help each one of us. We should not find it difficult. We should be able to open up our hearts and our minds and our neshamas to absorb as much Torah and as much of the pure Torah, just the way it is taught by Moshe Rabbeinu. And afterwards also to understand it ourselves. Hatzlacha Rabbi.
At least that Moshe himself is pure. Next to it, it's Atta, right? It says Atta, doesn't say Moshe's name, and that shows how for him it's pure.
Yeah, directly him.
We get it directly from Moshe.
The Atta is like the direct.
Atta means
More than
second
name.
person. More than a name.
Name is like a teacher.
Name is in third person, and Ato is in second person. If I would be talking about you to him, I would say Moshe Menachem. If I talk to you, I said you. Right? So which is closer?
So that's saying that the way that you said Moshe is completely, like, you have to even see it between you and Hashem.
Right. There is nothing. Right. There is no interference. It's directly Moshe with the Yid.
The idea of receiving the Torah as a pure thing.
So a blind person can't see his dreams. It doesn't understand.
I'll tell you, there are two categories. There's a person who has never seen, God forbid. He really doesn't know what the world is about. He doesn't. Person who, even though he feels and touches everything, the person who has seen and then has so lost his sight, then it's a difference. Then it's a different story.
I've never seen the Yetzer Hara.
Doesn't know what it's all about. There's nothing enticing him. There's nothing real.
But he still has ideas.
I think like purer.
Purer?
It's P-U-R-E-R.
Yeah.
Doesn't look right.
Doesn't look like.
It doesn't look right. It looks like power.
Yeah. How? Because the word is pure. Without the second R, it's also an E. It's not par.
Right.
The word is pure.
It looks a
Not
little
par.
weird.
Oh.
A pure form.
I'm getting sicker by the minute.
What?
He
I
said,
feel like I'm getting sicker by the minute.
I'm
Right.
like that too. We're all sick right now.
It's very not.
We all got this throat thing going on.
You have a minute to speak, Rabbi?
Yeah.
Yes?